Hello and welcome to our presentation of detecting slag formations with deep convolutional neural networks. My name is William Anson. I'm standing here with Christian von Koch, and we would like to acknowledge our co-authors Max Fischer and Raazesh Sainudiin. We're very happy and honored to be here at the DAGIM German Conference on Pattern Recognition. Let's dive into it. LKAB is a Swedish mining company producing iron ore pellets in the northern part of Sweden. They're facing a challenge of slag buildup in their Grate-Kiln system. Slag is a byproduct that is being produced when iron ore pellets are being heated up inside of this Grate-Kiln system, which is kind of like a furnace producing better quality iron ore pellets. And you can see here in the images to the right, we have highlighted these slag formations that end up inside of the rotary kiln of the Grate-Kiln system. The slag formations actually restrict the flow of the pellets and actually worsen the quality of the end product. They can also weigh above a ton, and if they would break loose, it can potentially damage the equipment. To deal with this, a camera has been placed pointing at the area of slag buildup. And this is a visualization of the Grate-Kiln system, and where the problem of the slag buildup, there the camera has been placed. This is the image data, some example images with varying characteristics. It shows how there's different lighting, there's a little bit of a different angle, and there's also this edge surrounding that obstructs the view of the camera.
So we wanted to research if it would be possible to measure the amount of slag formations with deep convolutional neural networks, which has been used in previous works in other applications successfully. So in close talks with LKAB, we decided to segment the images into 4 different classes, where the slag and background classes were needed to measure the amount of slag that has been attached to the flat surface of the kiln, which is the background. Also, they wanted to measure the amount of pixels of camera edge, since it could alert the maintenance crew that the camera hole needed cleaning. Wall pixels is basically the rest of the pixels. The models that we used was a modified UNet and also a more state-of-the-art PSP net. And we wanted to see if these models could segment the image and detect slag formations. And we created a dataset used for training the models. From this stream of captured images, we carefully selected 530 of them so that they were as different as possible to represent the full distribution of the dataset. We also labeled these images to enable supervised learning for the models. When we analyzed the class distribution of the pixels from this dataset that we created, we saw that it's a really skewed class distribution. In particular, the class slag is heavily underrepresented in the dataset, which causes problems for the model to detect this class. So we looked into some methods to counter this issue, and we found that you could use a different loss function and weighting scheme to aid the model in a better way. So we experimented with 3 different loss functions and 3 different weighting schemes, and we found that the best configuration for the UNet was to use the dice loss with inverse square volume weighting scheme, and for the PSP net, the categorical cross entropy with inverse square root volume weighting scheme. And these are the results from this experiment. The PSP net outperformed the UNet in all of the metrics measured. And to note here is that the results that we show is for the best configurations of these respective models. And in close talks with LKAB, we found that it was actually possible to measure the amount of slag. The results were satisfactory to be able to put it into production.
So moving forward with the best performing of this model, the PSP-net, we wanted to see how it performed in a productionized setting. And we quickly noticed that not all images were perfect in the raw image dataset. They contained occasional occlusions, like you see here to the right, of, for example, a flame or subsequent smoke as the Grate-Kiln is being heated by a flame. To deal with these occlusions, we implemented a occlusion discriminator model of a convolutional neural network where you can see the architecture to the left. It produced binary predictions whether or not the image actually contained an occlusion. And what we see here is when we have used the PSP-net to make predictions on 2 full days of raw image data. And since this was raw image data, we did not have any ground truth, and therefore we used the measurement of fraction of slag that was predicted by the model as our measurement. And what we can see here is that it has a little bit of a variance between approximately 4.5 to 6% in the figure to the left, and it also has these spikes that we have highlighted. So we wanted to see why is these spikes present. And what we found was that it was actually occlusions that had slipped through the occlusion discriminator, like this one is one of the spikes in the previous figures.
So we wanted to investigate further if it would be possible to reduce the variance of predictions by utilizing temporal information, since what we had was a stream of images. So we wanted to see if you could utilize the information from the previously captured images to perform a better predictions, basically. So we needed to create a temporal dataset. So what we did was that we used the previous dataset and added the subsequent captured images 10 seconds afterwards and labeled this to create a temporal dataset, basically. We had to filter out some images that contained occlusions. But in the end, we had 420 pairs of images for supervised learning. We looked into some methods to actually segment sequences of images, and one method would be to concatenate the image with the n previous images to a common input tensor and process these by an ordinary CNN network. But we also found some research pointing towards a combination of the two, to use an RNN in combination with a classical CNN, and this is what we went for in the end. So the final model that we used is this that you see to the bottom of the page. Two images are being fed into the PSPNet, the best of the models. They are being processed by the same weights, producing two feature maps that are then inputted to these two different convLSTM cells. So by doing this, we could utilize the information from the hidden state of the previous image and produce a better prediction. And the results we see here, the orange line represents the ordinary PSPNet and the blue line the PSPNet with an LSTM layer. And we can see that the blue line has very much lower variance, and these spikes aren't as apparent as for the single frame model. And we looked into the same picture as we showed previously, and we saw that the PSPNet with an LSTM layer actually could predict areas of slag behind the smoke due to the fact that it could utilize the information from the previously captured image, which was really interesting for a production setting. So
in conclusion, we have shown that it's possible to measure the amount of slag accumulated in this system through image segmentation with deep convolutional neural networks.
We have also shown that it's possible to reduce the variance in the predicted slag fraction by using consecutive pairs of images through a convLSTM layer in the deep convolutional neural nets.
And we also suggest an approach for handling images containing occlusions in video streams. We believe that this approach can be applied to other applications where you have this problem of occasional obstructions of the camera view.
Thanks for listening, and we now open up the sessions for questions.